In a quiet laboratory in Paris, a scientist carefully lifts a single strand of hair from a velvet-lined case. This isn't just any hair, it's authenticated by Napoleon Bonaparte's own signature, a letter he wrote to Vivant Denon, the first director of the Louvre Museum. The hair has been preserved for over 2 centuries in the Vivant Denon reliquary, waiting for technology to catch up with history. French geneticist Dr. Gérard Lecoq extracts DNA from the follicles of Napoleon's beard hairs. He runs 109 Y chromosome markers. The results come back from 3 independent laboratories. All 3 confirm the same finding with 100% certainty. Napoleon Bonaparte belonged to haplogroup E1, B1b1c1, also known as E-M34. If you're not a geneticist, let me translate what that means. This genetic signature did not originate in Europe. It emerged 7,000 years ago on the eastern Mediterranean coast, somewhere between Egypt and Turkey. Today, this haplogroup is most common in Israel, Lebanon, and the Palestinian territories. About 10% of Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews carry this exact marker. Think about that for a moment. Napoleon, the man who crowned himself Emperor of France, who conquered most of Europe, who is buried in a massive tomb in Paris, carried DNA that traces back to the ancient Near East. Now, Napoleon's family was Italian by origin. The Bonapartes came from Tuscany. They moved to Corsica in the 16th century. Napoleon himself was born in Corsica in 1769, exactly 1 year after France purchased the island from the Republic of Genoa. So yes, technically, he was French by citizenship, Italian by family heritage, Corsican by birthplace. But genetically, his paternal bloodline tells a completely different story. If you're fascinated by lost histories and ancient DNA mysteries, subscribe for more untold stories. But here's what the history books never told you. Napoleon's own ancestors may have known this secret, and they left clues buried in a single nickname that historians ignored for centuries. Let's go back. Way back. 11 generations before Napoleon was born, there was a man named Francesco Bonaparte. He died around 1540. Francesco was a mercenary, a crossbowman and horseman from Sarzana, a town in Liguria, northern Italy. He fought for the army of the St. George Bank, a powerful Genoese financial and military institution. In 1490, Francesco was stationed in Corsica. The following year, he married a local woman named Caterinada Castelletto. By 1510, he decided to retire from military service and settle permanently on the island. Francesco Bonaparte became the founder of the Corsican branch of the family. Without him, there would be no Napoleon. But here's the detail everyone overlooked. Francesco had a nickname. He was called Il Moro. In Italian, that means the Moorish, or simply the Moor. In Renaissance Italy, this wasn't a casual label. Moor was a term specifically used to describe people with North African or Middle Eastern features. Sometimes it referred to darker skin. Sometimes it pointed to distant origins from lands beyond the Mediterranean. And according to Dr. Lecoq's research, published in the Journal of Molecular Biology Research in December 2011, Napoleon probably knew about this. Aunt Lecoq writes, probably Napoleon also knew his remote Oriental patrilineal origins because Francesco Buonaparte, who was a mercenary under the orders of the Genoa Republic in Ajaccio in 1490, was nicknamed the More of Sarzane. Francesco married into Corsican society. He had children. His bloodline continued for over 250 years until it produced one of the most famous men in history. But the nickname stayed in the family records, the More of Sarzana, a label that pointed to something hidden in his ancestry. Was this just a random insult? A joke among soldiers? Or was it proof that the Bonaparte family carried Middle Eastern blood centuries before DNA testing even existed? The answer lies in a genetic signature found nowhere else in Europe, except among one very specific group of ancient travelers. Napoleon's haplogroup, E-M34, is extraordinarily rare in Europe. In Corsica, where he was born, only 1.4% of the population carries it. In southern Italy, it's 2%. In Sardinia, 4%. In Sicily, 7%. These are not high numbers. This was not a common European bloodline. So how did it get there? Scientists have proposed three main theories. Theory 1. Phoenician traders. Between 1200 and 300 BCE, the Phoenicians dominated Mediterranean trade. They sailed from what is now Lebanon and Syria, establishing colonies across North Africa, Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and southern Spain. Ancient DNA from 2,500-year-old Phoenician burials in Motia, Sicily, shows EM35 lineages, the parent haplogroup of Napoleon's EM34. These were seafaring merchants who moved goods, ideas, and their DNA across the ancient world. Theory 2. Jewish migration. So EM34 is called the best candidate for possible Israelite ancestry among Jews by geneticist Semino in a 2004 study. Over 10% of both Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews carry this marker. Among Libyan Jews, it reaches 20%. In 19 CE, the Roman Emperor Tiberius exiled thousands of Jews to Sardinia as punishment. Later, in 1492, Spain expelled its entire Jewish population. Many Sephardic Jews fled to Italy. Could the Bonapartes have descended from one of these groups? Theory 3. Ancient Levantine farmers. 7,000 years ago, during the Neolithic period, agricultural communities from the Near East spread into Europe. They brought crops, livestock, and new ways of life. They also brought their DNA. E-M34 may have arrived in Italy with these early farmers. But here's the most compelling detail. Scientists calculated something called the time to most recent common ancestor, or TMRCA. For Jewish carriers of E-M34, the common ancestor lived 3,375 years ago, give or take 430 years. That places him squarely in the era of the biblical patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the ancient priesthood of Israel. Could the Emperor of France have descended from the ancient priests of Jerusalem? To answer that, scientists had to test Napoleon's living relatives, and what they found confirmed the impossible. Charles Napoleon was born in 1950. He's the great-great-grandson of Jérôme Bonaparte, Napoleon's youngest brother. Through the unbroken male line, Charles is a direct descendant of the emperor. In 2011, the Eugenia Institute contacted him. They wanted to test his DNA. Charles agreed, and scientists analyzed 37 Y chromosome markers from his genetic code. These markers trace only through the father's line, grandfather to son, unbroken across generations. The results came back. Perfect match. Charles Napoleon carries the exact same haplogroup as Napoleon I, E1b1b1c1. But the scientists didn't stop there. They ran the test again, and again. 3 separate laboratories analyzed DNA from Napoleon's preserved hair samples. All 3 used 109 Y chromosome markers, the most comprehensive test available. All 3 produced identical results. The same YSTR haplotype, the same genetic signature. 100% certainty. Napoleon Bonaparte and his living descendant share the same ancient Middle Eastern bloodline. This wasn't just Napoleon. The entire Bonaparte dynasty carried it. Napoleon I, Napoleon II, his son, so the so-called King of Rome. Napoleon III, who ruled France from 1852 to 1870. Joseph Bonaparte, who became King of Spain. Lucien, Louis, Jérôme, every single male in the direct line. But if this bloodline is so rare in Europe, where did it come from? The trail led scientists to a forgotten land 3,000 years in the past, and a civilization that built ships, not empires. Close your eyes and imagine the Mediterranean Sea in 800 BCE. Phoenician ships cut through the waves, their hulls loaded with purple dye, cedarwood, glass, and silver. These traders didn't just move goods, they moved people. They moved DNA. Archaeologists have excavated Phoenician burial sites across the Mediterranean, in Motia, Sicily, in Carthage, Tunisia, in Sardinia. And when geneticists analyzed the ancient bones, they found something remarkable. Y-4 for an intra-M, 35 haplogroups, the parent lineage of Napoleon's E-M34, appeared again and again. The Phoenicians established colonies everywhere they traded, and the genetic evidence follows their routes like a map. In Galicia, Spain, 10% E-M34. In Sicily, 6.6%. In Sardinia, concentrated pockets near ancient Phoenician ports. The DNA matches the trade routes almost perfectly. But there's another possibility. In 1492, Spain issued the Alhambra Decree. Every Jew in Spain had 4 months to convert to Catholicism or leave. Hundreds of thousands fled. Many went to Italy, many settled in Sicily, Sardinia, and the Italian mainland. These were Sephardic Jews, and they carried EM34 at rates of 10% or higher. Even earlier, in 19 CE, the Roman Emperor Tiberius exiled 4,000 Jews to Sardinia, calling them troublemakers. They built communities. They survived. Their descendants spread across the Italian islands. So, which theory is correct? Phoenician traders? Jewish exiles? Ancient farmers? The answer should be simple. Look at the distribution of EM34 across the Mediterranean. See where it's most common, trace it back. But there's a problem with every theory. A problem scientists can't ignore. Napoleon's specific genetic branch, the Y58897 lineage, didn't spread across the Mediterranean. It stayed hidden in one tiny corner of Italy for 1,000 years. Here's what the geneticists discovered. When they searched global DNA databases for matches to Napoleon's Y chromosome, they found something strange. Almost all of his close genetic relatives, people who share a common ancestor within the last 1,000 years, live in one specific region, the Massa La Spezia area, on northern Tuscany and southern Liguria, the exact region where Francesco il Moro Bonaparte came from in the 1490s, not scattered across the Mediterranean, not in Lebanon or Israel or North Africa, where E-Gim34 is most common today, not even across Italy. Just one small pocket, a geographic trap. This means the Bonaparte lineage didn't arrive with the widespread Phoenician migrations. It didn't come with the Jewish exiles of 1492. It was isolated, frozen in place, a single bloodline that somehow preserved a Middle Eastern genetic signature for thousands of years in the mountains of northern Italy. Dr. Lucotte's research suggests that the common ancestor, the man who first carried this DNA to Italy, lived in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, over 3,000 years ago. Somehow, one of his descendants made the journey west, and instead of spreading out, the family stayed put, generation after generation, in the same valleys, the same towns. Compare this to other carriers of EM34. In Turkey, 5% of men have it. Among Ethiopian Jews, 14%. In Yemen, 8%. But Napoleon's specific branch? It barely exists in global databases. It's one of the rarest Y chromosome lineages ever identified. So how does an ancient Middle Eastern bloodline end up trapped in a corner of Italy for 1,000 years? The answer lies in a forgotten trade route, and a group of merchants who sailed from the Levant carrying something more precious than spices. But to understand Napoleon's full story, we need to look at the other half of his DNA, the side that came from his mother. Letizia Ramolino was born in 1750 in Corsica, but her family came from Liguria in northwestern Italy. She was beautiful, tough, and uneducated, and she spoke Italian and Corsican. She never learned French, not a single word. Even after her son became Emperor of France, even after she was given the official title Madame, the mother of His Imperial Majesty the Emperor, she refused to speak the language of the nation that exiled her family. When scientists tested DNA from Letizia's preserved hair, they found something just as rare as Napoleon's paternal line. A mutation in her mitochondrial DNA, the genetic code passed from mother to child. The mutation is called 16184C to T. It changes a single letter in the genetic sequence. One tiny alteration. How rare is it? In a database of 37,000 mitochondrial DNA samples, this mutation appeared exactly 3 times. That's a frequency of 0.00008%. One of those three was from Crete, two were from Italy, all three belong to haplogroup H, a common European lineage, but the 16,184 C to T variant, almost unheard of. The same mutation was found in Letizia, in Napoleon, and in his youngest sister Caroline, proof that it passed through the maternal line, generation after generation. So Napoleon carried two incredibly rare genetic signatures. From his father, Middle Eastern Y DNA, found in less than 2% of Italians. From his mother, a mitochondrial mutation found in 0.00008% of Europeans. But genetics aren't identity. Napoleon was raised speaking Corsican and Italian. He didn't learn French until he was 9 years old, when his family sent him to military school on the mainland. Even then, he spoke it with a thick Corsican accent. His classmates mocked him for it. They called him poor. They called him foreign. They called him short. For the first 24 years of his life, Napoleon identified as Corsican, not French, not Italian, Corsican. He signed his name Napoleone di Bonaparte in the Italian style. He idolized Pasquale Paoli, the Corsican independence leader who fought against French occupation. His mother, Letizia, remained culturally Italian until she died in 1836. She lived through her son's rise to emperor. She lived through his fall. She lived through his exile and death. And she never once spoke French. So Napoleon the Frenchman was genetically Middle Eastern, culturally Italian Corsican, and politically French. Three different identities, three different truths. But which one did he choose? The truth is written in his own words. And in a revolution, he almost missed. As a young man, Napoleon hated France. He was a fierce Corsican nationalist. He admired Pasquale Paoli, the revolutionary who led Corsica's fight for independence. Napoleon's own father, Carlo Buonaparte, had served as Paoli's personal secretary during the brief Corsican Republic. Napoleon once wrote, "On Corsica I was given life, and with that life I was also given a fierce love for my ill-starred homeland and fierce desire for her independence. I too shall one day be a Paoli." He meant it. In 1789, when the French Revolution erupted, Napoleon was 20 years old. He could have stayed in France, he could have seized the opportunities of a collapsing monarchy, but instead, he took leave from the French army and sailed back to Corsica. He joined the local Jacobin movement. He tried to become a colonel in the Corsican militia. He wanted to fight for Corsica, not France, but Paoli's followers didn't trust him. Napoleon's father had switched sides after the French invasion in 1769, dining with French commanders and collaborating with the occupation. The Paolists saw the Bonaparte family as traitors. Turncoats. In 1793, Napoleon made one last attempt. He tried to seize control of the citadel of Ajaccio from royalist forces. The mission failed. The Corsican Assembly condemned him. And in June 1793, Paoli's forces officially exiled the entire Bonaparte family from the island. Napoleon fled to mainland France with his mother, his brothers, his sisters. They had nothing, just the clothes on their backs. And at that moment, something changed. Napoleon abandoned his Corsican identity. He stopped signing his name Napoleone di Bonaparte. He Frenchified it, Napoleon Bonaparte. He threw himself into the French Revolution. He became a general at 24. A consul at 30, emperor at 35. The man who once dreamed of freeing Corsica from France became France itself. But did Napoleon's genetic outsider status drive his ruthless ambition? Did the knowledge that he didn't truly belong, not fully French, not fully Italian, not fully Corsican, push him to conquer a continent? Scientists now believe his DNA may hold the answer, not just to his ancestry, but to his destiny. Today, you can take a DNA test and compare your results to Napoleon Bonaparte. Companies like iGenia, MyHeritage, and Family Tree DNA offer this service. Upload your genetic data, and the system will tell you if you share markers with the emperor. Since 2010, the Eugenia Napoleon DNA project has tested over 47 men who claim Bonaparte descent. Some are proven legitimate, others are revealed as myths. DNA doesn't lie. Confirmed descendants include the line of Count Alexandra Kolona-Walewski, Napoleon's illegitimate son with his Polish mistress, Marie Walewska. Descendants of Lucien Bonaparte, Napoleon's brother, including the Clovis family. And Jean-Christophe, Prince Napoleon, born in 1986. He's the current heir to the Bonaparte claim, appointed in the will of his grandfather. All of them carry the EM34 haplogroup, the same Middle Eastern bloodline. But here's where it gets strange. There are too many locks of Napoleon's hair. Far too many. Museums across Europe claim to have strands collected during his exile on St. Helena or after his death in 1821. But scientists know that many of them are fakes. Now, using the EM34 marker and the rare 16184 C to T mitochondrial mutation, geneticists can authenticate these relics. What's a simple DNA test separates the real from the forgeries. And then there's the biggest controversy of all. Napoleon's tomb. It sits in Les Invalides in Paris, a massive porphyry sarcophagus under a golden dome. Millions of tourists visit it every year. But is the body inside actually Napoleon? Some historians believe the British switched his corpse with that of a servant before shipping it back to France in 1840. Others think the French government made the swap themselves for political reasons. There's a way to find out. A medallion exists containing a piece of Napoleon's frontal skin preserved after his death. Extract DNA from the skin. Compare it to the body in the tomb. If they match, case closed. But France refuses. The government will not allow the sarcophagus to be opened. They say it would be disrespectful, a violation of national heritage. So the emperor's final mystery remains unsolved. Napoleon Bonaparte, born Italian, raised Corsican, ruled as French, genetically Middle Eastern. A man whose DNA crossed 3,000 years and 3,000 miles to shape the destiny of Europe. But one question lingers. If we tested the body at Les Invalides, would it even match? The answer is locked in a tomb that France will never open. And maybe that's exactly how Napoleon would have wanted it.